everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad, Gustafson, and I share two books that we love and we think you should read when, Brad?
Well, Jen, I'm pretty sure the books we share are so good that they're only real choices. People will want to read them right now.
That's right. They will be rushing out with their mask on and maintaining a socially safe distance to their local bookstores to grab them right away, I'm sure.
And with their glasses fogging up with their mask on. Yes, I'm sure that'll happen to everyone else. Maybe I'm still the only one.
No, it's okay. We feel your pain. So what have you been reading this week, my friend?
I got a good one. I got a hot one, as they say. So this is new for me. I'm sure other people have read books like this, but it's an anthology with 10 or more contributors. And the overall theme that ties these books together, they're stories of resistance. But the author and the curator of this book makes it a point to say it's not necessarily about people who are leading protests or that are featured in monuments. It's literally like showing up, and maybe it could be in this age of the pandemic, someone making a difference or standing up for healthcare workers, or just the list goes on and on and on.
Sure.
And in some cases, like just simply getting up and getting out of bed and showing up and just not being defeated, that type of resistance, and everything in between. So it's super accessible. The reason I was hooked on the very first story, and I've been continuing to dabble and jump around, and I think someone else in my house is also enjoying this book, because every time I go to the coffee table to pick up where I left off, it's in a different spot, you know, and I just love, my kids are reading all the time. So one of them is really enjoying it, I can tell.
I love
which
it.
is good, because when I read I'll just tell you about the first story in the anthology, and then just know that they're all amazing, and they're all very different too. So Grace is an Apache. I don't know how to say the first part. Lipan Apache or Lipan Apache, and the story starts where she's in 8th grade, and her family moves around a lot, not necessarily by choice. So that's part of kind of the oppression, or what's needing resistance, but she finds herself at a school and she joins an extracurricular. It happens to be chess club. And she talks about how the reason she joins these clubs is to try to find friends from moving all the time. Anyway, there's one boy she ends up playing chess with. He has a really cool chess set. So that's kind of why she gravitated to him. They get kind of close in a chess kind of way, like playing chess together. And I love chess, so I'm not knocking that. But then he beats her, and like forcefully tries to kiss her, and she resists it. So that's like the theme in this story. And as I was reading that once, all sorts of like feelings, dad feelings, principal feelings came to mind. And I knew I wanted my kids to read that. I wanted to talk to them about that. I wanted to talk to my son about it for some reasons. And I also wanted to talk to my daughter about it for some brave reasons to support that. So not only is it, powerful and really well written, like everything I've read so far, but it's very diverse. There's all sorts of different things happening in this book. There's poetry, there's graphic novel contributions, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So the book is called Take the Mic. And when I said it's like on fire, it really is on fire. You can just see how vibrant the cover is. And the contributors, Jason Reynolds has a poem in here that I've read, I swear, at least 10 or 15 times, because each time I get new and different meaning, and I'm having this conversation with myself, like, did he mean that? Or what's the parallel here? It's just very, very incredible. But I highly recommend. I would say all educators, and I think just human beings, can get so much out of this book. So #read this now. Take the mic.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I've got so much to say. First of all, I have a copy of that book, which I would grab, except I'm afraid that a million other books will fall down when I try to do that.
Well, then you know what you need to do? You need to move it up on the to-be-read stack.
Exactly, because your book talk makes me want to do that. But two things I wanted to mention. Number one, I wanted to be friends with him because he had a cool chess set could have come out of my mouth. So I felt like I had a soul sister in Grace right away. And then secondly, I love when I hear you talking about reading things multiple times, because I feel like that is something for at least a while that you were wondering about the value of. And so I love hearing you say those things now. So that's
It's true.
awesome. It sounds like a great book.
And I don't usually do that. You know, the other cool thing about this is each of the stories that make up the anthology, you know, sometimes the satisfaction and the yearning and the feelings and the roller coaster you get as you're reading a whole complete novel. It's
Hmm.
like you get that with each of these, but it's just more because they're shorter, you get it over and over and over. So that you just a
Right.
highly satisfying, powerful read that makes you think. I will say on the chess front, do you really play chess? Is that what you're trying to say?
I certainly have. I don't play it
Okay.
religiously or anything like
Okay.
that, but I
Okay.
certainly have. But in high school,
Yeah.
I would have been totally keen to get to know the person with the cool chess set. That would have been real cool for me. So
Okay,
I
same
love it.
here. Because you and I have hung out before. We know a lot about each other. We both are two of the most hydrated. This is water, not coffee, but
Yeah.
we're two of the most hydrated people on the planet. But I didn't know that you um, possibly were in the chess world too, which I love. So when Deb and I, my wife and I are high school sweethearts, so some of
Yeah.
our earlier dates involved playing chess.
Yeah.
But come to find out, I think she was maybe just trying to be nice to me now because we don't really play chess anymore. Or what more likely happened is I was probably overly competitive and turned her off to the game of chess. And that's my fault in my life.
You were the boy with the cool chess set, first
Yeah,
of all.
right.
So things have come full circle. And secondly, Deb just found other things that she could beat you at and chose
Right.
was probably right.
Right. And now I'm
That's
gonna vent. I'm
amazing.
gonna vent really quickly. Sixth
Please
grade
do.
chess club, because
Mhm.
I was in the chess club.
Yeah.
Very competitive, as most people who know me well know. So all year long in the chess club, you know, we're practicing, we're playing. It gets to the end of the year, the big tournament. First person I'm up against is Peter Wegstrom. He beats
I like
me.
that you still know his name. I like that you
Yeah,
still know that.
I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. Peter beats me, Jen, in the 4-move checkmate. Something that everyone knows about now, or most people know about now, but I was so naive and into my own chess moves that I just hadn't heard of the 4-move checkmate. So I was out of the tournament. I set a record at Otter Lake Elementary for quickest to lose a chess season.
I love it. A pivotal moment in Brad Gustafson's chess history. I love that
So
so,
as you
so much.
always do, can you redeem the show and give us some credibility? Give us your wonderful book talk. Add to my to be read pile. Save this thing, Jen.
Oh, it does not need saving. I love when we find that we have things in common. I think you are a little more passionate about chess than I am, but I do enjoy chess. So I would be totally prepared to lose when we play, but we'll have to add playing chess to our list of things that we're going to do on those rare occasions when we're together in the same physical space, because it doesn't happen very often. But
Right, right.
well, listen, in the meantime, I feel like today is a historic day in the history of Read This Now, because
Okay.
I'm about to break the rules, my friend.
Nice.
I know this show is built on a foundation in which two friends share two books, but I'm about to share two books on my own this week.
You're really going there.
I really am. So get ready, buckle in. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but
We're gonna have to revisit the show norms before and after every recording from now on. No, just kidding. I can't wait.
exactly. I need to refresh my understanding of those norms and the agreement I signed when I signed on for this thing. But in reality, these two books go together in my mind in a way, because they have me thinking about a practice that librarians know a lot about, but other people might not. So we've already sort of digressed into the world of chess. So now we have to digress into the world of being a librarian. One of librarians' most important jobs, right, is to cultivate resources for young people. And part of that process, cultivating a collection, is the process of weeding, which is when you take books out, or you deselect them, take them out of your collection because they're no longer serving the needs of your kids. And I got to tell you, Brad, shocking as this may be, there's a lot of librarians who resist weeding. And I understand some of their concerns. A lot of librarians worry about not having money to purchase other materials to replace the ones that are weeded. But I am a big proponent of weeding, which is for a whole other show. But the reason I bring it up right now is because one of the things that I get a lot of pushback on from librarians is my recommendation that history books, books in your nonfiction section that deal with history, should not be any older than about 8 to 10 years old. And librarians always say, what? That's crazy. History doesn't change. But the two books I want to share with you today are prime examples of how historical events might not change, but our understanding of them does, and how it's really important to have an up-to-date understanding of history represented in your library.
Hey, Jen, the principal in me, so I was wrestling with what you were saying with, because I'm thinking of like the War of 1812. If someone wrote about that 30 years ago, probably the War of 1812 didn't change 5 years ago, but I see what you're saying now. Our understanding of it could be more enhanced.
Yes, and the histories that have been written about those events were all often written by the victors, by the majority voices, and contributions and experiences of marginalized voices were left out of those original histories that were written of events like the War of 1812. And as newer books are published, we have to look for those that more broadly represent the experience of everyone who was involved. So here, this is a prime example. This is Lifting as We Climb, Black Women's Battle for the Ballot Box by Eveette Dionne, which is all about the women's suffrage movement and about how women fought to get the right to vote in the United States of America. One thing that you may know, and people who are watching the show might remember, is every election day, typically there's news coverage at Susan B. Anthony's gravesite, where people go and put I voted stickers on her gravesite because she is recognized as one of the founding women of the suffrage movement here in the United States. But one thing that I learned from this book is that, yes, that's very true. That history hasn't changed. But what's been left out of her story is that she wrote and spoke about how she would rather not have the vote than for Black people to vote. So while she was pro-women voting, she was anti-Black people having the vote. And this book is all about women who fought, women of color who fought to get voting rights in this country, even though they knew they would never apply to them. One of the pieces of this book that I love is that throughout the book, there are these little sort of profiles of women who fought to get the right to vote in this country. And that one in particular, Anna Julia Cooper, was a real shocker to me because this is a woman who fought hard to get the right to vote. She was the fourth Black woman in this country to ever earn a PhD. And why this was so shocking for me, her story was because she was a North Carolinian, and I lived in North Carolina for 30 years and never heard of her. These are the stories that often get left out of history books. And so we need newer books that are featuring a truly representative view of history. This book is only about 150 pages, but so rich with complex and important stories and voices that relate to the women's suffrage movement, but that I'm guessing most people have never heard of. So when people think about, I need to have a collection that includes this information for research, this is a book to include. Lifting as We Climb, Black Women's Battle for the Ballot Box, and it is by Eveette Dionne. The second book that I read this week, Brad, that also reminded me of why librarians need to read their nonfiction is The Rise and Fall of Charles Lindbergh. And you might know Charles Lindbergh because he's a Minnesota guy. A lot of people know Charles Lindbergh because he was the first pilot to ever fly across the Atlantic Ocean, an incredibly dangerous feat and accomplishment at the time. The Spirit of St. Louis, his airplane still hangs in the Smithsonian Institute of Aviation, or the Aviation Institute there. And he's famous also because his child was kidnapped, the Lindbergh baby. We all know those things, or may have know those things about Charles Lindbergh. But here's some things I learned about Charles Lindbergh through this book. He was a Nazi sympathizer. He was a politician who supported laws that would limit rights and freedom for people of color. He was a white supremacist. He also was the inventor of an artificial heart, but didn't want his invention to go into people of color. So this is a complex man. It doesn't change his accomplishments. He still accomplished amazing things, but that's not his whole story. His whole story is complex and not necessarily painted with the same brush of admiration that older versions of his story would be. So when we think about our collection of resources that kids might use for research, we have to make sure that they represent the most complete, newest thinking on these events possible. By the way, I'm just going to add this one last caveat for this book, The Rise and Fall of Charles Lindbergh by Candace Fleming, is that every year, trade journals like School Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, etc., they give starred reviews to what they think is the very best books published in that and during the year. So far in 2020, this book is the only one to receive 6 starred reviews this year. And wow, I could see why. It was pretty incredible. So those are my 2 books this week. I broke the rules, but I felt like I wanted to make an important point about how history doesn't change, but our thinking around it does. And we have to make sure we have the most up-to-date thinking available for our kiddos.
Right. That was really powerful and interesting. So it also reminds me of just the goal, not the lip service, but the actual goal of being a lifelong learner. And I think the adults, I think we owe it to the kiddos we serve and ourselves and society to really learn about the complex, the issues and the people and the times. And I could see some people pushing back saying, oh, you're trying to change history, or, oh, you're trying. But it's actually like, no, I'm trying to be a learner and understand the complexities involved here. And you can either be open to that or not. What do you choose?
Right. There's an old saying about how histories are told by the people who win, and that's very much true. And I don't think I don't seek to change history. I think I just want our kids to know the whole story, not just the version told by whoever ended up benefiting from that event. I want them to see the whole story and how it affected all people, and also to understand that people are complicated and that they have complicated legacies. People that we raise up as being, heroes, quote unquote, often that doesn't make them perfect. It doesn't change the fact that Charles Lindbergh was the first pilot to ever cross the Atlantic. That remains true. But we have to honor him by also recognizing the parts of him that were flawed so that we can learn from them.
Hey, Jen, since we're talking about norms and rules, I'm just going to go back. When you and I first started these awesome conversations that are my favorite, we were going to do a 2-minute show. I mean, you thought you could do a 1-minute book talk. I thought I could do one, but that didn't happen. So I don't know if we should just talk about this another time, but I am curious about weeding. I just want to say one thing. I wonder if I were forced to update my book collection, I think a lot of it's emotional for me. Like I read a book and I don't want to separate from those feelings, which is why I have some books that I read a long time ago. I wonder if that's part of the issue, and that we're hoping that our kiddos in our media centers can maybe have those same feelings with some of the books. I don't know.
For sure. There's several things, and I have to laugh every time we remind each other that we thought this show was going to be 2 minutes long. But and people and our 2 or 3 viewers, they're hungry for more, so let's give it to them, right? But what I would say is that we have to separate our personal feelings about books from our professional obligation as a curator of resources for kids, for a lot of reasons. First, we talked already about how the content is important. The second thing is that if we just keep shelves and shelves full of old books, that sea of spine labels can be a barrier for kids, because it's harder to find the one book that they really need when they have to dig through 100 of them that they don't need, right? And the other piece of it is that you don't really get an accurate picture for yourself or your administrator about what you really need in terms of resources if you allow your shelves to just be full of books that no one is reading or that contain outdated information. I'm going to use like Pluto as an example. Let's say I'm a librarian and I have 10 books on the solar system, and 8 of them say that Pluto is still a planet. Well, if I take 8 of those books out because they're outdated, then it might cause me to freak out and say, oh my gosh, I only have 2 books on the solar system. But guess what? You really only ever had 2 books on the solar system. You were just hiding that fact in a full shelf, hiding it from yourself, hiding it from your administrator who can't see that you need more resources because your shelves are all full, and then also hiding the 2 good books you have from the kids who need them. So not weeding doesn't really change the status of your collection, it just hides it.
Dang, that was good.
What, you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about this because that's my job, but I just feel like if we're really going to be curators of resources, curating isn't about necessarily more, it's about having the best. And luckily for us, wait, get ready. This is going to be an amazing segue. Get ready. Luckily for everybody viewing this is Brad and I every week curate a list of the best books we've read. Dun, dun, dun.
Pro caliber move there, LaGarde. Pro caliber move. And our curated list, let's see how well I can write on your coattails or whatever it's called. Our curated list can be found at bit.ly/read_this_now. Is that where you were going with that?
That was amazing. It's almost as if the show was scripted or something.
Yeah, right, which almost, but not quite. You know what, Jen, in the history of Zooming, I don't know if I've ever done this before, but I'm clapping for us right now, Jen.
I love it. Thank you, my friend, and thank you
Great
to
to see
everyone
you.
watching. We hope you have a great week. Happy reading.
Happy weeding, too.